Today we are going to look at Moola Nakshatra. Moola occupies the first degrees of Sagittarius and is the 19th nakshatra in the Vedic zodiac. The name Moola means root, and that single word captures the essential character of this nakshatra. It is about going beneath the surface, finding what lies at the foundation of things, and understanding origins. As we will see, that drive to get to the root of things is both Moola's greatest gift and, in some ways, its central challenge. Moola has three core themes: deep inquiry and investigation, dissolution and loss, and oratory, the power to enthrall an audience. All three flow directly from its symbol and its deity. Moola's symbol is a bundle of roots tied together. Roots are what anchor a plant. They are the invisible foundation that makes visible growth possible. They penetrate deep into the earth, into unseen realms, drawing up what the surface cannot provide. That image of penetrating depth, of reaching into what is hidden, defines this nakshatra. The presiding deity is Nirriti, the goddess of dissolution and calamity. Nirriti personifies evil and corruption and is sometimes called Alakshmi, which means the opposite of Lakshmi, the goddess of prosperity. Where Lakshmi brings abundance, Nirriti brings poverty or hardship. She either directly causes material loss or she causes prosperity to deteriorate after it's been attained. That is an important distinction. Nirriti does not simply prevent success, she allows success to be reached and then dissolves it. That pattern of achievement followed by loss or a deep accomplishment without corresponding worldly reward is one of Moola's most recognizable signatures. The tied roots add one further quality: a sense of restraint, bondage, or limited mobility. There is something about Moola that holds the native in place even as they dig deeper. The three themes worth understanding in Moola are as follows. The first is deep inquiry. Because roots penetrate into unseen realms, Moola is associated with getting to the bottom of things through science, philosophy, investigation, or any other form of deep research. A person with a planet in Moola often goes very deeply into whatever that planet governs. The classical texts note, however, that this depth of inquiry does not always lead to worldly prosperity. The planet in Moola may produce profound understanding without corresponding material reward. The second theme is dissolution and contrariness. Nirriti governs reversal, loss, and the deterioration of what has been built. Moola natives can be contrarians, people who instinctively oppose the established order or present the opposite point of view. There is also a tendency towards betrayal by colleagues, which is a specific classical warning associated with this nakshatra. Borrowing and lending are traditionally cautioned against under Moola's influence, as debts incurred here tend to become troublesome. The third theme is oratory. When the ascendant of moon falls in Moola, the classical texts indicate a skilled and clever individual with strong oratorical skills, someone who can enthrall an audience. This quality sits alongside the deep inquiry theme. The Moola native does not merely understand things deeply, they can communicate that understanding with unusual power. Roots also have medicinal uses, which connects Moola to medicine and healing, and the unseen origins of visible conditions. In other words, the germs that cause diseases or the hidden foundations that determine what we see on the surface. These are all Moola's domain. When the ascendant falls in Moola, the themes of deep inquiry, dissolution, and oratory tend to show up clearly in the person's public life and identity. Agatha Christie had Moola rising, and she is a direct illustration of the investigation and deep inquiry theme. Her entire body of work, over 60 detective novels, is built around one central activity: getting to the hidden roots of things. The murderer is always concealed beneath a surface that appears innocent. The detective's task is to dig past that surface to the truth underneath. That is Muller's investigative drive expressed through literature. Christie also went deeper into the mechanics of crime, poison, and human psychology than almost any other writer of her era. She is the most published novelist in history, and yet her personal life was notably private. There is a restraint and concealment about her that is consistent with the tied roots of Muller's symbol. Malcolm X had Muller rising as well, and he illustrates all three of Muller's themes simultaneously, which makes him the richest single example in this talk. He was, by any measure, one of the great orators of the 20th century, a man who could hold an audience with complete command. His was also a fundamentally contrarian voice, opposed to the established racial order, opposed to the dominant approach of the civil rights movement, always presenting the sharpest possible alternate point of view. He went to the root of questions about race, power, and identity with an unflinching depth that made him both compelling and dangerous to those around him. And his life ended in the starkest possible expression of Mola's dissolution theme. He was betrayed and assassinated by members of his own organization. That specific detail maps directly onto the classical text's warning about betrayal by colleagues. Deep inquiry, contrariness, oratory, and dissolution, all four in one life. Lastly, we look at Oprah Winfrey, who also has Moon rising, and she represents the oratory and audience theme at its most successful modern expression. She built an entire media empire on her ability to hold an audience, to go deep into people's stories, draw out what is hidden, and communicate that to millions of viewers. That combination of investigative depth and communicative power is very characteristic of Moola. Her early life also carried Nirriti's shadow. She experienced serious hardships and trauma before prosperity arrived, which reflects the classical pattern of dissolution preceding, in this case, rather than following achievement, which we see in some Moola charts. The moon in Moola shapes the inner mind and emotional nature. Here, Moola's themes show up in what drives the person internally, how they think, and what they are drawn to pursue. Neil Armstrong had his moon in Moola, and his connection to the deep inquiry theme is among the most literal on either list. Armstrong went further into the unknown than any human being had gone before. He stood on the surface of the moon, which is as close to the root of human exploration as it is possible to get. His career was defined by the willingness to go into completely uncharted territory at considerable personal risk, driven by the imperative to find out what lies beyond the visible frontier. That drive to penetrate the unknown, to get to the root of what has not yet been reached, is the pure Moola investigative impulse expressed through space exploration. Next, we look at Al Gore with his moon in Moola, and he is one of the clearest illustrations of Nirriti's dissolution pattern in contemporary political life. He achieved the very pinnacle of what an American politician can reach. He won the popular vote in the 2000 presidential election, and then, through a sequence of events that remains contested, that achievement was dissolved at the final moment. The prosperity was attained and then deteriorated, which is Nirriti's specific pattern as described in the classical texts. Gore subsequently redirected his energy into climate advocacy, going deep into the root causes of environmental crisis, which brought him the Nobel Peace Prize, but not the presidency. That shift from worldly political ambition to a deeper inquiry is itself very characteristic of how Moola can redirect energy after dissolution. Lastly, we look at Billy Graham, who also had his moon in Moola, and he is the clearest illustration of the oratory theme. Graham preached to more people in person than anyone in history, an estimated 215 million across his career. His entire ministry was built on the power to enthrall an audience, to hold millions of people in his attention and move them deeply. He also went to the root of spiritual questions with unusual persistence and depth, dedicating his entire life to a single inquiry. And his ministry connected to Muller's medicinal theme in a spiritual sense. He presented his message explicitly as healing, as the remedy for what ails the human condition at its deepest level. The careers and places associated with Muller follow directly from its themes. In medicine, doctors, healers, and those working with medicinal roots, flowers, and fruits. In inquiry and investigation, researchers, scientists, investigators, and philosophers of all kinds. In oratory and public life, debaters, politicians, ministers, officers, and judges. Big courts of justice and large institutions also fall under this nakshatra. Contrarians and those who make a profession of presenting the opposite point of view are specifically mentioned in the classical sources, which in a modern context might include journalists, opposition politicians, defense attorneys, and academic critics. To summarize what we have covered today, Moola is the nakshatra of the root, of going beneath the surface to find what is hidden at the foundation of things. Its symbol is a bundle of tied roots. Its deity is Nirriti, the goddess of dissolution, who allows prosperity to be reached and then causes it to deteriorate. Its three core themes are deep inquiry and investigation, dissolution and contrariness, and the power of oratory. Moola is not an easy nakshatra. The tried roots suggest a certain restraint, a sense of being held in place even while going deep. But it produces people of extraordinary depth and communicative power. And as the nakshatra that opens Sagittarius, it carries within it the seed of the philosopher, the seeker, and the one who will not stop until they find the truth at the bottom of things.